graphic designing are two different disciplines, or do they overlap each other?
I would say that the culture of how an architectural school or an architectural project is very similar to how, say, a graphic design practice would work.
Particular moment that made you realize that design is universal regardless of medium?
So I think you never consciously think that design is universal. It's always in retrospect. Like if you ask me now, I can say that yeah, probably design is universal. But when I shifted from architecture to graphic design, I never really thought.
How do you handle client, those who want something trendy versus something timeless?
So dealing with clients in general is difficult, irrespective of whether someone wants a trendy design or a timeless design. But the other thing is this whole conversation around something being trendy or timeless is very subjective, because something that's a trend could be timeless for someone else.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Spotlight, the Pillai podcast. And for today's episode, we have with us the founder and the creative director of Pickle, Mr. Shiva. So welcome, Shiva.
Hello, thank you.
How are you?
I am good. How are you?
I'm good. So just for our audience, can you just introduce yourself?
Sure. I am Shiva, and I studied architecture at Pillai's college, and currently I run a graphic design practice called Pickles in Navi Mumbai, in Artist Village.
That's lovely. So Shiva, how did your journey into architecture begin, or what led you to into the world of graphic designing?
So my journey into architecture very subconsciously started when I was very young. I used to love rearranging the house with my mother when we used to live in an apartment earlier. And that's how it started, I think. I loved doing that with her, and it was just, rearranging the sofas from one place to another. And then interestingly, I saw this movie called Swades. I've always been a huge fan of Shah Rukh. And I saw him in one of the scenes. He was working on these, really huge sheets with markers and pencils and all of that. I was very sure that I couldn't become a scientist like he was in the movie. But then architecture was the closest thing that I thought would allow me to work on these big sheets with pens and pencils and all of that. So it's as silly as that. That's really how I got into architecture.
Okay, that was lovely to hear, and I can relate that. Even I am a huge fan of Shah Rukh.
Everyone should be.
So, is architecture or graphic designing are two different disciplines, or do they overlap each other more than people think?
I would say that they're not really the same. The output and the tools are very different. But I would say that the culture of how an architectural school or an architectural project is very similar to how, say, a graphic design practice would work. So it's more to do with the overall culture and the experience of what happens within an architecture college that is very similar and overlaps with, say, a graphic design practice or a graphic design project. It's also the one thing that overlaps between architecture and graphic design is the sense of freedom that you have. Like, for example, in an architectural school, the school that I studied in, there was a lot of freedom, freedom to say what you want, to present what you want, to design what you want, to wear what you want, and all of that. So that really was one of the things that also allowed me or my brain to think that, after studying architecture, I could get into another field. That was that a sort of empowerment that I got from, studying architecture. So that sense of freedom is something that overlaps and that kind of helped me shift from one field to another.
That was quite insightful. So, was there any particular moment that made you realize that design is universal regardless of medium?
So I think you never consciously think that design is universal. It's always in retrospect. Like if you ask me now, I can say that yeah, probably design is universal. But when I shifted from architecture to graphic design, I never really thought, that design is universal and hence I should shift from one field of design to another. But maybe I have like an anecdote which I could say that, which made me feel that design could be universal. Not really from working in graphic design projects, but this is actually from the classroom. I remember one of my favorite teachers in college was Mr. Jinu Kurian. He's also an architect who also studied in Paika. And taught us when we were studying. And there was this one lecture that he came into, and that entire lecture, I mean, that lecture was of the subject called Theory of Design, which was supposed to be about design, but the entire lecture was about this particular song called Chaiya Chaiya from Dil Se. Very weirdly, a lot of my decision making has had Shahrukh somewhere at the back. Very, I mean, it's just something that wasn't planned. But anyway, Jinu sir came to the class and he spoke about Chaiya Chaiya. The song, the composition, the cinematography, the rhythm of the train, the tunnels and all of that. And that was one class that I very clearly remember. And because I came from government school education and, in those schools, teachers are like how you imagine teachers to be, really strict and sometimes rude. And so, I mean, I loved music always, and I've performed in school and all of that. But I've always felt that, the teachers were, not all, but most of them, some of them were very derogatory when they, spoke to you about you and your music, which is, either band wale or nach gaane wale, all of that. So it always made me very insecure that maybe what I'm doing is probably not right. School is to study and that's all you should do. But coming to college and after attending that lecture that Mr. Gino Korean took, that class really empowered me, and it just gave me a lot of strength. And, it made me think that you are okay to like other things or even love other things than what you are supposed to actually love as per what people tell you that you go to college to study. But this was beyond that, and I think that kind of made me think that probably yes, I mean, design is universal, because he spoke about a song so passionately as if it was art or design or a building or a graphic poster. So that is one moment, that is one lecture that I will never forget, and it kind of is probably where I, in my head, started to think that I was okay to do what I wanted to do.
That was quite thoughtful, and it's very beautiful to think that how just one song can provoke so many things in your mind. So how do spatial thinking and visual hierarchy translate between architecture and graphic designing?
So, I mean, in a way, because, I mean, the earlier question was if design was universal or
right.
And I do think in a lot of ways design is universal, and hence, I mean, when you talk about visual hierarchy and, spatial thinking, it's quite similar, because when you study architecture, you are taught to ask a lot of questions. I mean, questions like, why this should be here, or why can't something else be somewhere else? Things like that, with respect to space. And when you take graphics, it's not very different, because, I mean, in one place, which is, I mean, architecture, you're dealing with spaces. And in graphics, you're probably dealing with communication. I mean, whether it's text or imagery or, icons, whatever. But the questions that you ask in architecture are very valid also in graphics. So it's quite similar when you think of architecture and graphics in that sense. And the other thing is, in both architecture as well as graphics, you are actually dealing with the sort of experience somebody should or would have within a space. So it's either within a space for architecture and, say, with a poster for graphic design. So the core idea is very similar, that you have a client or a user that's engaging with your work, whether in spatial form or, say, in visual form. But your intention is the same. I mean, you want to give a certain experience to that particular user. And hence, I mean, it's quite fluid. It's very similar in both architecture and graphic design.
So lastly, I want to ask you that how do you handle those who want something trendy versus something timeless?
So dealing with clients in general is difficult, irrespective of whether someone wants a trendy design or a timeless design. But the other thing is, this whole conversation around something being trendy or timeless is very subjective, because, something that's a trend could be timeless for someone else, and vice versa. So, I mean, this thing about someone wanting a trendy design or wanting a timeless design is very, I would say, is not necessarily the question that we ask ourselves also when we are dealing with clients. It's always, we're usually trying to solve a problem, right, when you're designing something. So that's the most important thing. Beyond that, whether something's going to be a trend or whether something's going to be timeless does not really matter. At times we try to do something that's timeless, but you never know, right? When it reaches the audience, whether someone thinks of it as timeless design or not, is not in your control after a point. So this trendiness, timelessness is very subjective, and I feel that we don't necessarily deal with clients wanting one or the other. We are always asking them, what is your problem and how would you want us to solve it? Or we'd ask them that, okay, this is the problem, we'll give you a solution, and let's see if it works out or not. So that's all that matters, to solve the problem. Whether if it's through a trend, then so be it. And if it eventually becomes timeless, then that's really something that you don't have control over. So it's totally cool that way.
So thank you so much, Shiva. It was lovely to have you, and this podcast is surely going to be very, very insightful for all our aspiring architects and also graphic designers.
I hope so, and I hope this goes viral.
Yeah, it will.
for you guys and for me.
Yeah, surely. Hope so.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, and it was lovely talking to you. And I'm happy I could give some insight, whatever I knew.
For more such insightful chat, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Pillai Group Online, and do not forget to follow us on Instagram at Pillai HOC College, on LinkedIn at PHCOA.